This week, why Mission is named the Metro's police ticket capital. Kansas Governor Brownback signing another round of tax cuts in Overland Park and using the occasion to lash out at Missouri. Plus, this week, a round-robin look at what's happening at some area development projects, from halls leaving the plaza to why 5 years after its opening, the city is still bailing out the Power and Light District. Hello everyone, I'm Nick Haynes. We've been away for 2 weeks with our KCPT membership drive, and so this week you get the benefit of 3 weeks in review, all for the price of one. And we have 4 top journalists up to the challenge of connecting the dots on those stories for you. Kansas City Star development reporter Kevin Collison is with us. From News Radio 98.1 FM KMBZ, Bill Grady, Kansas City Star nationally syndicated columnist Mary Sanchez, and Star reporter, blogger and columnist Dave Helling. Now, I've just been on vacation for 2 weeks and expected when I came back that the Kansas legislature would still be in session, still wrestling over tax cuts in the budget. Well, they almost were. Governor Brownback only yesterday signing into law a gradual phasing out of income tax cuts in the Sunflower State, the signature accomplishment of an exhaustive legislative session. He signed the bill into law at a construction site in Overland Park.
We're on a path of growth and job creation. So I say, come to Kansas.
Why the construction site in Overland Park for this bill signing, Dave Helling?
Well, it's always nice to have pictures of big, shiny objects behind you when you sign big bills like that. Governor Brownback, Sam Brownback, and the Republicans in the legislature have argued for 2 years that the point of their tax reductions is not just about easing the burden on people, but it is to bring jobs, businesses, development to the state. Governor Brownback has really emphasized that this year. His argument is that by keeping the sales tax higher than it would have otherwise been, but continuing to phase out individual income taxes, you will create an Arthur Laffer-like growth in the state of Kansas, and I think the setting was meant to emphasize that fact.
And this very week, though, that these income tax phasing outs occur, though, Mary Sanchez, in your very own newspaper, we see some public safety cuts being introduced here in the state of Kansas. This week, the Department of Corrections looking at cutting 1 in 10 parole officers, trimming back prison guards, cutting funding for juvenile delinquent programs, yet they can afford to be cutting taxes?
Well, and you'll notice there was no little lovely shiny objects in the background for that sort of news. And that's the problem. I mean, anytime you have these issues, and it's budgeting, it's fiscal decisions, you know, there's going to be a loss somewhere else. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul, and just what does work out. You know, you cut parole officers, that has an impact on communities. It's a harder thing to track and see. You can see the big shiny new building, but that's what all has to be balanced out here.
Just so the terms of the debate can be clear for us, the bill the governor signed is a net tax increase over several years, largely because of the reinstatement of the sales tax. So the cuts that you're talking about, Nick and Mary, are basically the result of last year's action, which was such a significant tax cut that over the 2-year time frame, there is less money for government.
Now, also at this press conference this week where he's signing into law these income tax reductions, he's also taking a pot shot at the state of Missouri. And the governor, Kevin Collison, saying, well, you know, because we've heard about this whole cross-state border rivalry between Kansas and Missouri, Kevin Collison, and that, you know, what is, you know, Kansas luring all of these jobs from Missouri, but Governor Brownback this week saying, oh, he'd love to negotiate with Missouri.
Well, it's
love to do so, but no, it's not him at all. It's the governor of Missouri's fault here.
Right.
He's not willing to make changes.
Which is rather disingenuous. I mean, you know, there was a concerted effort by some significant civic leaders here about 2 years ago. They wrote a joint letter to both Governor Brownback and Governor Nixon saying, please, let's declare a moratorium on using these incentives. And Nixon at least said he'd be willing to entertain the idea. Brownback didn't even respond to their request. Now, apparently there has been a little bit of progress, but I have a hunch this shiny building that the governor was standing in front of is probably being built because it's being built for a company that was lured from Missouri to Kansas, sacrificing, again, state income taxes. That's one of the major tools, is these companies are being allowed to keep their employees' state income taxes, which A, takes money out of the pockets of Missouri, B, does not go into the Kansas Treasury for another 10 years, and vice versa when Missouri does it. And again, has the effect of forcing other taxes to be increased, which example, the sales tax going up in Kansas. You know, it's a robbing Peter to pay Paul type of game. And the big thing is, it doesn't do any good for the overall metropolitan area. It really doesn't bring new jobs. It doesn't have, people don't build new homes. You know, it's just a wash, to be honest with you.
Bill.
I'm not sure that anybody was really surprised when the governor said he was willing to negotiate, because he's made a concerted effort to distance himself from the actual luring of jobs. His contention all along has been, these are blind offers. I don't even know about them. I just, you know, they come in without my involvement, and a lot of people have questioned as to how deeply he is involved.
That's nonsense. And the governor's been quoted as saying he's using this area as an experiment for his tax policies in Kansas. I mean, you know, they look at Johnson County, they meaning Topeka, as being a major economic engine for the entire state of Kansas. I mean,
Which
the
is true,
statistics are,
actually.
yeah, there's far more money generated by the businesses and the people living in Johnson County going to Topeka in proportion to their population for the overall state. They look at Johnson County as being, you know, an extremely fruitful area for them to try to generate more revenues for the state of Kansas. And as far as what that means to the overall Kansas City metropolitan area, that really hasn't entered into the equation yet down there.
Well, let's move to the other side of state line. Well, we were asking you to sign up to become a member of KCPT by offering you tickets to see everything from the Moody Blues to Garrison Keillor over the last 2 weeks. Missouri Governor Jay Nixon vetoed the largest income tax cut in 90 years in that state, sponsored by Lee Summit Republican Will Krause. It was designed to allow Missouri to better compete with Kansas. Now lawmakers are threatening to overturn Nixon's veto at a special session in September. But if there is such concern about what's happening in Kansas, Bill Grady, why did Governor Nixon veto that measure in the first place?
Because Governor Nixon says, had he not taken that action, prisons would have closed, education would have suffered, seniors would have paid more for their prescriptions, and it wasn't necessary, because Missouri has, according to the governor, the lowest taxes in the region of all the surrounding states, so it wasn't something that was needed, and it would have been much more negative.
Now, businesses, though, have been complaining all along that all of these jobs have been going over to the Kansas side of the state line, Kevin.
Well, you know, Missouri has gotten a few major wins, too. Freight Quote, a major firm, is going to be moving into their new space on the Missouri side of the border. There has certainly been a lot. Applebee's came over here. You know, Kansas has had an edge. But again, getting back to the point, most development people I talk to say that what companies look for the most is quality of life, education, policing, parks, those kinds of things. I wrote a column a while ago. Minnesota has some of the highest state taxes in the country, and yet by all measures, its economy is far stronger than Kansas and Missouri, and Kansas and Missouri already are among the lowest tax states. So there's really, most companies, most people will tell you, yes, that's one of the things companies look at, but most of all, they look at education, and they look at the quality of life and the places they want to go.
So it's not all about the taxes, Mary?
Not always. It will be for some politicians, and that's the way they'll spin it, and you'll hear those terms played out. But the way people live is they live in neighborhoods, they live around churches, they live around communities, and that's how people choose where they live. They may crisscross back and forth across a state line, but they have roots down on either one side or the other.
And also,
we're a region.
And one other quick thing, you know, we've got a couple of major players who are kind of working behind the scenes on this. We have the Koch brothers down in Wichita who have been pushing this income tax cutting agenda, and we have Rex Sinquefield in St. Louis who's been pushing it on the Missouri side. Both of them, you know, this is not your small-time person who's looking for a break so they can move their company. This is very much in their self-interest to see these tax cuts for income tax, and then the burden shifted to working folks who have to pay more sales tax.
Well, the governor, I said, vetoed this, but Republican lawmakers in Jefferson City are incensed by that. They're looking at a special session in September in which they're looking to override that veto.
And not a special session. They have a veto session
Okay.
every year, and they will attempt to override this. Just quickly, the Civic Council in Kansas City wrote Jay Nixon a letter asking him to veto the tax cuts, which reflects the views of the sort of establishment business community in Kansas City, making the argument you've heard here that cutting taxes would cut services and broadly disadvantage the region. That's why they're involved. But Kansas and Missouri are involved, Nick, in a fundamental discussion over how people should be taxed. Is it best to grow an economy by giving businesses and corporations big tax breaks and shift that burden onto people through sales, property, and to some degree even income? Or is the better idea to give people a break on their income, sales, and property and raise the taxes on business primarily by cutting out tax breaks, tax credits, that kind of thing? Both states have decided to go with the first approach, or at least the Republicans in both states have tried to do that. That's where Jay Nixon stands, at sort of the middle of that debate. So what happens in September will be extraordinarily important.
Bill.
Talked to Senator Will Krause the same day that Governor Nixon signed the veto. And he said that Governor Nixon's claiming that this $800 million hole that this will create in the budget, it would have created in the budget, is really specious, that it's indexed, and he is very confident that there will be an override.
The Power and Light District is marking its 5th anniversary, but it's still losing money. Opened in 2008, the downtown entertainment district next to Sprint Center is still being subsidized by city taxpayers to the tune of $14.3 million. But if you head down there, it looks to be filled with bars, shops, and restaurants. So how can that be, Kevin?
Well, let's just say the numbers did not work out the way they originally promised, obviously. And to be honest with you, this shouldn't come as a surprise. A couple of years ago, we sat down at the Star, and Troy Schulte acknowledged this thing's going to probably need subsidies through its entire life. And the problem is that it was sold as being self-sustaining by the taxes it would be generating. They spent tremendous amounts of money. Cordish will argue on streets and garages and sewers that needed to be upgraded, and really we shouldn't be held to account. But the point was the whole project was sold on that. They have not, you know, it's got a lot of bars and restaurants, but there's still a significant amount of vacant space. There's not a heck of a lot of retail there. There are several major buildings or parts of buildings that have never had tenants. They've already had turnover in several spaces. So it's still very much a work in process, and even just getting fully occupied. Most people will agree at City Hall it was money well spent, that it gives people a reason to come downtown. Downtown was on the ropes. It wouldn't have really had much of a chance moving into the future, and it's made it a better place for people to live. There have been a lot of people living downtown. That Cosentino's Market has become the de facto town square of downtown Kansas City. It's a marvelous place, but the numbers were overpromised, and the revenues have not met it, and they still got some real estate to fill at that place.
So there are other intangible benefits, Mary, beyond just these financial numbers that we're talking about here?
Well, it does. It was a boost to the city in many ways. For our downtown to be revitalized, that was a huge portion of it. And I applaud it for that. But it is at the very beginning of when these agreements were made, they should have held Cordish to a lot more than they did. There's also been problems for numerous restaurants there in handling their leases. And that has undercut some of these restaurants' abilities to really set ground in and build their clientele. I personally think that there are way too many of these little bitty boutique shops that you walk in and wonder, how in the heck could they be possibly turning a profit? I mean, that's management of who is going in there and how those leases are managed. And that all does play out in the money of where it comes down the line.
And the thing is, as Mary points out, Cordish negotiated a deal in which any of their losses are going to be subsidized by the city of Kansas City. So, you know, yeah, do they have a rational, do they have a motivation to fill the space? Yes, but are they subject to the same kinds of difficulties if they don't fill that space? No, because they got a backdrop called the City Hall and the city taxpayer.
And the spin on it the city seems to be taking is but when. And it's but when the streetcar is built, but when we get the 2 new apartment buildings downtown, but when we get a convention center hotel, this will all go away.
But doesn't this fuel skepticism, though, about all city projects,
Well,
Dave,
this
when,
is the
when people see this?
Right, it's the classic example of what I just talked about, which is the theory here was, let's give a tax break to Cordish, or broadly give benefits to Cordish. They will build it and everyone will be happy. No one stopped to say, wait a minute, what if we gave that $15 million a year back to the people and let them spend it? Maybe that's the way to grow the economy. But in this area, In Kansas, Missouri, and Kansas City, we have incented businesses for decades without anyone sort of standing up for the other side of the equation. And in some ways, we see the results of that with the Power and Light project.
After almost a half a century on the Country Club Plaza, the Halls department store is closing its doors. While we were hosting our 2-week membership drive, Halls announced it's consolidating its operations at its Crown Center location, leaving the plaza for the first time without a department store. Why?
It's what they own. I mean, even the thing that's interesting is when you talk to some of the workers there at the Plaza store, when they were called in for their meeting to announce this to the workers even thought that it was going to be the Crown Center location that was closing. But really, when you look at it, they own Crown Center. They don't own the spot down on the plaza. So it wasn't making money in this economy, which I've always been told, and who knows what the real truth is, that store never really did, that Halls is like a gift to Kansas City, you know, a lovely package somewhat to have that. But when you're not making money in that large of a space and Highwoods controls that property, you're going to go to where, you know, you don't have that issue with the lease.
Yeah, from what I understand, I think if they looked purely at if Halls was just a franchise department store and deciding which store they were going to close, they probably would have kept the one in the plaza open and closed Crown Center. But it is owned by Hallmark, which owns Crown Center. It's a way to reinforce their investment in Crown Center and then avoid, they don't have to pay the rent. But I think if you looked at the pure market, if what the people who shop there, it would probably be more appealing to stay in the plaza. But again, they don't own that real estate, and they want to reinforce the huge investment they've got in Crown Center.
Because it is interesting, because you think about Crown Center, just even like 5 years ago, Crown Center had a lot of vacancies. Yeah. And you think, wow, the plaza was hopping.
That third floor area, their shopping centers always struggle too, and that's where, you know, I think that's where a lot of this is going to go.
The thing to keep in mind, Nick, is that the way we buy goods in this country is changing dramatically. The internet is blowing up that whole model. I think you will see across the country the idea of standalone stores like Halls or any big department store is really going to be under pressure. People can buy clothes and do buy clothing and other goods online. I think maybe this was a forward-looking step as much as it was a reaction to the specifics.
Bill,
of this
do you have the scoop on what's going to actually take the place of Halls on the Country Club Plaza?
I don't. That would be a Kevin Collison question.
It's an attractive property. I mean, you know, look what Highwoods did with the old Saks department store. They basically converted the upper floors into office space, and they located several boutique-type stores on the ground level. They could easily do the same thing with the Hall stores. And one thing that my colleague Joyce Smith pointed out, the second level of that Hall store originally was a garage area, and they only put the retail in recent years. So there's some flexibility there. And actually, when you go to the plaza these days, Highwoods got beat up, and rightfully so, for some of their office building ideas, but I think overall they've done a pretty good job of bringing in retail and restaurants down there.
Are you announcing that Bloomingdale's is coming into that area?
I would seriously doubt that. We couldn't even keep Mark Shale here, so no.
Sorry, Bill, you were going to say something.
It will attract a different clientele at Crown Center because there's more of a tourist element there now, especially with Legoland and the aquarium.
Yeah.
Yes.
And younger children demographic.
And the plaza's kind of skewing more towards a younger demographic with Forever 21 and H&M and some of those places that are not your real Halls clientele.
I want to talk about another development project in our metro that's been grabbing the headlines, and that's the Schlitterbahn Water Park, which opened 4 years ago. According to the Star, there's still a lot of barren land instead of shops and tree houses around the perimeter of Schlitterbahn, next to the Legends in Wyandotte County. A project that by now was supposed to be a $750 million vacation village. The plan originally foresaw more than 1,000 hotel rooms, including cabins and structures built to resemble tree houses. An anchor tenant was to be Scheels Sporting Goods megastore with a 65-foot Ferris wheel. Scheels is now actually building near 135th Street in southern Overland Park. So what happened? Why didn't they build there if that's such an attractive area?
Nick, I mean, the Western Wyandotte County has been an incredible story over the past 10 or 15 years with Nebraska Furniture Mart, the Legends, Cabela's. At some point,
the miracle is over?
You run out of gas. And
Has
these
it?
guys, yes, seriously, I mean, to be honest with you, when Schlitterbahn first announced this deal, I was extremely skeptical. I mean, how much more retail, hotels, et cetera, can you pour into that area? And it's been an amazing story. And then we hit the recession, which even more complicates it. But I think it was always estimated as to what they're going to be able to do out there. Thank God it's been developed by a private family, although Entertainment Properties has a major investment, which is a local firm in the loan. It just was like, my God, how much more retail can you build? And then we hit a recession.
Yeah, my job is to connect the dots here on Weekend
Of
Review,
course it
Nick.
is.
And what do the projects around Schlitterbahn have in common with the Plaza, which we just talked about, Crown Center, Power and Light, and that is all of them received major taxpayer subsidies. The Legends project, the Plaza got $250 million in tax breaks. Crown Center was built because of tax abatements, and Power and Light. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. That's what lawmakers never tell you, that sometimes it's a good deal, sometimes it may not be a good deal on the other side, and I think Schlitterbahn is the example of the latter.
Although, on the other hand, Schlitterbahn was
Itself.
developed privately. The tax breaks were going to come in for the retail and hotel
Right,
stuff.
but
So
I'm talking about the whole
I
Legends.
understand the
Right,
philosophy.
right,
Yes,
right,
yes.
right.
Is Mission, Kansas on a mission to ticket everybody? A front page story in the Kansas City Star this week called Mission, Kansas, the ticket capital of Kansas, with police issuing more tickets than there are residents. That amounts to almost 2 tickets an hour, 24 hours a day. That means you are 9 times more likely to be ticketed in Mission than in Overland Park, 18 times more likely than if you happen to be driving through Lee Summit. Now, is this really about safety, as they claim?
I seriously doubt that. Mission is, they are blessed in many ways to have a lower crime rate and not some of the issues, so that they can literally have their police force going out, the entire police force, writing tickets. I mean, in Kansas City, you have a certain number of the officers that's what they handle, and everyone else has to deal with more serious crimes. Mission doesn't have that. So they're out there doing this. It's generating money, but you almost wonder if some of it isn't self-fulfilling prophecy, because they're writing so many tickets to generate money to pay for services and the officers to write all the tickets.
Maybe once the Gateway project opens up, they won't have nearly as much pressure to write tickets. I live in Northeast Johnson County, and I tell you, I see police cruisers constantly. Many of them, again, like Mary points out, thank God, the crime rate's not bad. They got a lot of time to pull people over. I applaud Karen Dillon for a great story, though, just vividly displaying how many tickets get issued in Mission.
Bill, now the mayor, Laura Cornwell, came to KMBZ this week. Give us a little bit more insight into this.
She said it's all about public safety, that it's not about generating revenue. And
they did have one of the highest traffic accident rates in the state of Kansas before the current police chief came into office there. And so they were worried about that. Wasn't that the case?
That was the case. And one thing people may overlook from time to time is that Mission does get a lot of cross-county, cross-city traffic from Kansas City, Missouri into Johnson County, vice versa. But I talked to a traffic lawyer day before yesterday, and he said among the trade, it's been known Mission is a speed trap.
Now, it is interesting. Mission, though, it does get a lot of is getting a lot of headlines for a lot of different quirky kinds of policies. Everything from the driveway tax of late. We also had they were going to be the only city in the entire metro to unilaterally do a cell phone ban while driving. And Dave Helling, actually, in this morning's newspaper, you were talking about a potential consolidation with the city of Roland Park.
I was trying to make a point.
I know you were. What type of reaction did you get to that story?
Well, a lot of people have written say that would be a great idea that will never happen, which happens a lot in Kansas City, in the Kansas City area. Mission has also had a controversy over redevelopment along Johnson Drive. There's a big fight over that. The Gateway project that Kevin mentioned is, of course, where the Walmart is going. That, by the way, is also getting taxpayer subsidies. I just thought I'd throw that in. And so there is some disagreement about whether or not Roland Park now will have to sort of react to what Mission has done and whether that's fair. And what I was trying to suggest today is the bigger problem is we have a lot of little municipalities. That's inefficient by definition. Perhaps we should consider that inefficiency rather than where the Walmart goes.
No, my only complaint about he didn't go far enough. I think Prairie Village, Mission Hills, all those smaller Northeast Johnson County, they're very similar, and I can't see a real reason for them to have separate city governments and police departments and all the rest of it. There's been consolidations with public safety, with the fire departments, et cetera. But again, you try to start seriously dissolving some of these political boundaries and all hell breaks loose. Yeah.
And finally this week, the Chancellor of MU departs. It's front page news this week as Brady Deaton, the head of the University of Missouri, steps down after 9 years on the job. Why is he leaving?
He has other things to
retire.
do, I guess. It's time to quit.
He's
and move
71.
on.
What was fascinating to me about the story, though, of all of the things in that, almost every single accomplishment that he had was sports related. Is that the barometer of success today of a chancellor,
I
Mary?
think
Is that what
no.
means that whether you're successful?
I think that we, and you can blame the media on this one, heavily cover those issues because people are obviously very aligned with MU, Tiger football, and the SEC decision. But this chancellor was very, very involved in many other aspects of the broader university that just don't generally tend to make the front page quite as often.
We need to keep our eye on post-secondary education, Nick. The
Absolutely.
Kansas legislature cut funding for higher ed. Tuitions are going up. There will be enormous pressure on the Missouri system for whoever the next president is to address what I think is the next big target of lawmakers, and that'll be college and university education.
So not just leaving the Big 12 is something else that we need to be concerned about
Down the
rather
road,
than just athletics.
That'll be the next
Mom
coming
and Pop are
political
going to
battle.
have to figure
this
out how to
Absolutely.
pay for tuition.
Alrighty. That is our 3 weeks in review here on Kansas City Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers from the Kansas City Star, Mary Sanchez and Kevin Collison, Star reporter, blogger and columnist Dave Helling, and from News Radio 98.1 FM, Bill Grady. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.